So, hello for those of you who are joining us live. My name, or if you're watching the replay, either way, my name is Alison Coombs. I'm the founder of Moms with IC. This is a great support group for moms, whether you're pregnant or in the postpartum phase, or you're a veteran mom. This is a great place for you to get advice and support. And I always want to be interviewing specialists in the area to bring you guys more value because IC sucks. A snippet of my own personal story. I've had IC since I was 19 years old. I'm now 35. Can't believe that it's been so long, but I've been in remission for quite some time. Um, and I just want to pop on and share hope with everybody else that you can also get to remission. And I think sometimes we lose sight of hope, and I want to always be bringing that hope back into conversation. So today, to bring that hope back into your life, I am interviewing Callie, who is a registered dietitian and who specializes in interstitial cystitis. So I'm really excited to hear what Callie has to say, because I know that nutrition plays such an important role in the lives of IC patients like you and I and Callie. All right, so Callie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story with interstitial cystitis, and when did you get it and what made you interested in nutrition, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. So, hey everyone, I'm Callie Krajcir. Like Alison said, I am a registered dietitian. I reside in Pennsylvania. I've had interstitial cystitis for my entire life. I am now 26. I have been through every life stage so far dealing with this condition. So, I definitely had different emotions. I always tell people it's been an emotional roller coaster, just navigating, kind of forcing my diagnosis on my doctors because nobody would diagnose me. And so I went through every different treatment method possible. I did not take diet seriously at first. And then once I was at a point in my life where I hit rock bottom, I was finally willing to look at my diet, and I conducted an elimination diet. And I ended up identifying that I can consume a lot of different things that the IC diet tells us not to. So my long-term goal has always been to be a dietitian specializing in IC. And when I passed my exam, I learned that there was only one dietitian in the entire United States that specializes in this condition, and that is Julie Beyer. And I was like, this is a problem because diet is just such a big thing in terms of treatment and managing this condition. And so a year ago, I created my company, Callie K Nutrition, and decided I'm taking the plunge. I am specializing in this, and the rest is history. What else do you want to know from me?
I would love to know, with your elimination diet, what did you do? Because I know that that would be helpful for people that are watching. So how did you conduct your person? Because there's so many different ways of how to do it.
Yeah, there's tons of different ways, and I'll kind of tell you how I recommend people do it. Just, I think that's the most helpful way. So, what I recommend is, first of all, wrap your mind around the fact that it's going to take some time. I tell people estimate around 3 months, and it will be worth it in order to identify your unique dietary triggers because we're all so different. We
Mm-hmm.
all don't have to avoid all of these things on the IC diet list forever. It's meant to be a guide for your elimination diet. That's a big misconception in the IC community. And what I do is I recommend splitting it into 3 phases. So the first phase is a baseline phase, second is elimination, and third is a testing phase. So baseline phase is about a week of time where you don't make any changes, but you're recording everything you're eating, how you're preparing it, what your symptoms look like. So I have my clients actually measure how much they're urinating.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having them track their pain levels, different symptoms that might be individualized to the person, but that lasts about a week. And we're doing that basically to have baseline data to compare our progress to.
Individualized to the person.
And
that lasts about a week.
Oh, I'm echoing now.
No, that was my fault.
We're
Go
doing
ahead.
that basically to have baseline data.
that was totally my fault. I was trying to check if someone had commented. There was a notification that it was too loud.
That's
Sorry.
okay. I'm good. Okay, so second phase is the elimination phase, which is when for about 2 to 4 weeks time, they are only eating off of the bladder-friendly column of the IC diet. And that gives your bladder a chance to rest and recover. And then most people experience an extent of relief during this period, especially if they are diet sensitive, just because we don't have all those irritants in there. Now, the third phase, which is the testing phase, is when you are going to be testing all of the potentially bothersome foods, beverages, or supplements. Each testing period, so you test one thing at a time for about 3 to 4 days. You start with a very small amount on the first day, so maybe like a sip of coffee, and then you make your way up to whatever a regular size portion looks like on that third day. And that could look like an 8-ounce cup of coffee for that same example. And really what you're doing is identifying, do you have any reaction to the item? And if so, what is that reaction? Can you eat or drink something in a small amount before getting any symptoms? So really what the elimination diet does is it shows you what you are uniquely sensitive to. And it also shows you, can you eat something in a small amount? And it helps you to break out of that food fear mentality that a lot of us experience just because you don't know what is going to set you off. And I have found through my professional presence on social media and just chatting with different people that this is a big problem for so many people out there. They are handed this diet list, told to avoid these things, and then that's all the education they get. And people start to really fear eating anything off of that bladder friendly column. So I'm really trying to get the word out there that that's not the case. You are not supposed to follow the IC diet for the rest of your life, and that you need to do an elimination diet in order to gain that confidence back with eating and, you know, feel confident to go out to eat and, you know what to order, know what questions to ask, and know how to handle it. Does that make sense?
I think that's amazing when you're talking about fear, right? Because even with, from a different perspective, the movement perspective, if you, it's like, say you have a mom and she has diastasis recti, right? And she has IC. Then she says, they say not to Kegel. It's a fear thing, right?
Yeah.
But that's not black and white either, right? So I think like it's the same thing as what you're saying, that it's for a time, it's not forever. It's not, you're supposed to be able to relax your muscles and work on that. So then you're able to strengthen your core. The same idea is what, you know, a lot of people are scared to move, but we know that movement is good for the body. We know nutrition is good for the body. And being scared to eat, right? Having that anxiety when you're eating is making a flight or fight response within the body, right? And that's pumping cortisol, and that's not helping with healing, right? So
correct.
I love what you said about, you know, tackling that fear component, because you don't want to be, you know, being anxious when you're eating your food, because it's going to impede digestion. There's so much with that. I think that's a whole big topic.
Oh yeah.
You know?
And I'm working on educating physicians on how to properly educate people. So that's something in 2022 that I'm really going to focus on. It's just that education component to help provide more education on diet upon diagnosis.
Yeah, I think that is great that you're reaching the doctors, right? Because I remember when I got my diagnosis, it was from a nurse, but it was just very dry. Like, you know, here's some you know, if you want to take Elmeron, and if you don't, we can't help you, sorry, right? Like, you know, this is something you're going to live with for the rest of your life. But I was 19, I can't accept that, right? Like I was depressed and in a lot of pain, and I was like, what do you mean? There's nothing that you can do. So I find that I know that you have your clients and you have a program as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about like your program and what that entails? Like
Yeah.
do you look at all aspects of like, the human, so like the stress as you talked about, do you look at that and then look at movement and other sort of areas as well?
Yeah. So I created a program called Road to Remission that combines an elimination diet with education and a private support community. So the elimination diet I already explained to you. It's under my supervision. Make sure that everything's being done in a safe manner. We're not missing any nutrients. The second part of that is the education component, which I think is like such an important part of just having this condition, is educating yourself on just all the various aspects of it, and nutrition being one of them. So I discuss a lot of different topics like macronutrients, how to eat a balanced diet, different supplements that they could potentially try. We talk about digestion, different things like that. And then for things that are outside of my scope, I bring in a guest speaker and I have them, do a guest lecture on that topic, whatever that may be. So we have a mindset class, we have a sex and relationships class, we have a hormones class, pelvic floor PT. So different different topics that they're being taught. And that final piece being that private support community. So we have a group of people only in the program. It is very positive, very uplifting, and we get on 2 group calls each week where we connect face to face like we are now and just chat with each other. And, if somebody wants to vent, they can vent. If somebody wants to share their wins for the week, like we were just talking yesterday about how somebody successfully tried pasta sauce, like marinara sauce.
Nice.
And we all just like clapped for them, and somebody else was successful with soy sauce. And it's just like such a fun community and support system to have during a time like that. So that's the program in a nutshell, but I really think it's the perfect combination to give somebody the best chance at reaching remission. But I do want to point out that that doesn't mean there aren't other pieces of the puzzle. So obviously pelvic floor PT is a really big piece for some people. And the majority of clients that I have are working with a pelvic floor PT, as am I. And also just the other parts of the medical team, like your urologist or your urogynecologist, they can help you maybe talk through different treatment methods, or if you are somebody who wants to try installations, you could do that. Or they could give you as needed medications for when you are testing different things during the elimination diet in case you have a flare up during that time. So it really is an all-encompassing course, but it also, you still need that team.
Yeah,
also.
it's a team effort to get to remission for sure.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
hard sometimes to do, you're in an overwhelmed sort of state, right? When you're stressed out, you're in pain, and sometimes it's hard to think or piece together what you need to piece together to make it to remission. So I think that I love that there's so many different professionals now that actually address IC, because I know when I was younger and had this, then there was, I had to search and search and search and search and search, and I found 2 books and I read them, and that helped me at the time to make progress. But I think that it's really good that there's so many of us now that are there to help with this condition, because so many people, are suffering and they don't need to be, right?
Right.
There's progress to be made. So what have you seen from people? Because I know a lot of people maybe have questions about like, well, how long if I join? I know that that's a hard question to answer because everyone's body is different. But what have you seen like in some of the clients that you have served, like that are using nutrition, and the rest of their team? So did you see progress? Did they see progress after a month, 6 months, a year? Like, what's kind of the
I would
average maybe?
say anywhere from a month to 2 months. Usually people are building up that confidence. Having the support to fall back on is really helpful. I feel like people are a lot less stressed when they know that I'm there to help them along the way. But like I said, people, if somebody is diet sensitive, they will most likely have some extent of relief during that elimination phase. So that's a good sign going through it. And it might get difficult or a little tedious in the testing phase, but it's important to remember that, you know, we all just want to get to a point where our symptoms are managed. We have that confidence to eat whatever we want to eat, or just live the life that we want. And it's important to keep that end goal in mind when you're going through this.
So after people have discovered their sort of unique triggers, I think about myself back way when maybe I couldn't eat cranberries and I couldn't eat chocolate irritated me, and like tomato sauce. All right, those were like three, and pineapples, things I really like to eat, of course. So but I eat everything now. So do you find it the same after the bladder has time to heal, that people can over time? So say they couldn't at testing phase, they still couldn't eat it, but like a year from that testing phase, that maybe they could successfully start eating it. Have you seen anything like that?
Personally, yes. On my journey, years ago, I couldn't have any of those most common bladder triggers. Like I couldn't drink coffee. I couldn't, do anything like that. And now I drink coffee every morning. I can have pretty much anything in moderation. If I overdo it, then yeah, I'm going to flare. But I feel confident that I have the tools to manage that if it happens. So personally, yes. And I've also heard similar stories from a couple other people, but there's not that many people talking about that type of thing yet, which I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, because I think that's another thing to bring back hope, right? I'll parallel it to like, pelvic health, right? Like sometimes you're starting just with relaxation and release work, and then eventually, you're going to go back to strengthening work. Sometimes these exercises are off the table, but later on you can reintroduce these exercises, right? And then you kind of balance between. So I feel like nutrition is very much the same. Like at this testing phase, you may have had this problem. So maybe the food is not right for you yet, but that doesn't mean that you lose
Right.
hope because it's not right for you with a big yet, right? But it doesn't
Right.
mean that when the bladder, maybe it heals some more, you're on the right supplements, you have less stress in your life, that that food can be right for you later on. So I
Yes.
think that's like to bring the hope back into it, that as you said, elimination diets are not forever. It's it's for a time. You test what's specific to you, and there's so many different kinds of treatments too with that. So I love that you bring in all the different kinds of professionals into your program um, to teach. And I think even with things like I don't know if you touch on that or you've had any guest speakers on the spiritual mindset component of chronic illness, because there's that, like for me, those books that I read, there was a trilogy of them. Right. And one was just about supplements. The other one was like mind body connection and spirituality. And, even things like cutting toxic people out of your life, right? That,
Yeah.
So many things. So what are your, if you can give people nutrition and non-nutrition based 5 tips of how they can, live a happier life with IC, what would your
Yeah.
tips be?
Before I get into that, I do want to say, I just launched the first 2 episodes of the ICU podcast this week. And the first episode is with a chronic illness mindset coach. Her name is Jess Talbert, and she's fantastic. And I would recommend anybody to follow her on Instagram and listen to that episode if you can. So we'll get to that later. But 5 tips for, what did you say? Nutrition for IC?
Living a happier life with IC. So that can be nutrition, like you can bring that in, or you can bring up just things that have really helped you in your life. So nutrition is a component.
Yeah.
What else would you say?
So I like to tell people to view their IC as a puzzle that is unique to them. So remember that when you are seeing what's working for other people, what's not working, just take all of that with a grain of salt, because we all need to find our own unique solution to our IC puzzle. So for me, that is avoiding my dietary triggers, that is attending pelvic floor PT, that is managing my stress, and a couple other little things. But it takes time to identify what works for you and what doesn't, and to be patient with that. And mentally, I know that it is there's a lot of Facebook support groups out there, and sometimes it can get a little dark and, worst case scenario feeling sometimes. So if that is not serving you, take some time away from it. Maybe come back when you're feeling better. But if you're in these groups and you're not feeling like it's benefiting you and it's just giving you more stress, then maybe get out for a little bit. So that's another big
Great
one.
tip.
And then my last thing I would say is think of your flares as the ocean tide. I actually got this from my pelvic floor physical therapist. It's going to come in, but it is always going to return to the sea. So that means flares are going to come, but they're also going to go. You're going to have times in your life when your symptoms are minimal. And, it's important to keep that in mind when you're in a flare and you feel this like hopeless feeling, and maybe that you're not going to make it through, but it's important to keep that in mind. So I feel like I gave you 5 things in all of that.
Well, yes, okay, we'll go with the 5 things. That is true. It was like, yeah, it was 5. It was 5.
Yeah.
It was probably even 6. It's fine.
I could give you way more than that, but those are all I can think of right now.
That's fine. I think those are really, really valid and really good tips. Um, so tell us a little bit about, I know you launched your podcast, and so tell us a little bit, because you had started to tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that. I'd love to hear some more.
Right. So it is called ICU. So it's ICYOU. And it is going to be a podcast that has a couple of different episode types. So first, there may be episodes where it's just me sharing my story. There might be episodes where it is IC experts giving or sharing their knowledge with other people. So I might interview a urologist or pelvic floor PT or different professionals. And then the last type would be I'm giving IC warriors a platform to share their story so that other people can listen and maybe get some ideas or get some hope. And I'm going to be putting out new episodes weekly, and I'm really excited about it. The first 2 episodes are posted, like I said, and they are available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Okay, awesome. So later on, just link back and put in the comments so people can find you at your Instagram and all the
Sure.
things, and they can find your podcast and your
Yeah.
blog, because it's great. I see some of the stuff you post and I'm always like, oh, that's such a great topic. So I normally I share it on our support group to help others as well. So I think, do you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, I think
Little
that's
thing?
great. If anybody has questions, I'll hop back in later and see if there's anything I can answer. I haven't been paying attention to any questions. So they can also send me a DM on Instagram. They could find me at Callie K Nutrition. I'm on there the most probably. But yeah, they can reach out to me if they have questions.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and teach us about IC and nutrition. I think that it was a very beneficial and informative and hope providing session. So thank you very much for that. And cheers to continued remission for you. And
Thank
for me
you so
too.
much for having me.
No problem. All right. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.